Welcome to the study. This is Professor Hemlock here. Today I want to go over 9.0.5, the state of Arcane Mage and where we're at. So, since I've been gone, I do want to thank everyone for all the support I've gotten from the community. It's been the last week and a half has really been a tough time for me personally, and I can't thank everyone enough for the support that I've gotten from the community. It's really been an amazing thing, and I just can't thank enough of you. You've truly been friends to me during this time, and I'm happy to be a part of this community. So I don't want to get too mushy here. Moving into today's topic. So the state of Arcane in 9.0.5. First off, I want to start with Raid. I do think this is where most people look at when they see how a spec is performing because there's a lot of logged data. So, going over Arcane's current state, I first want to look at where we're at in comparison for all specs. So, Frost, Fire, and Arcane. Arcane is unfortunately the lowest performing spec. We're, anywhere between 10% to 8% behind Frost or Fire on most fights. So there is a pretty substantial gap in the top parses. What I did to formulate this data was I looked at three specific fights: Huntsman, Artificer, and Sludgefist, and I took an average of the top parses and then kind of compared where they're at DPS wise. Those three fights, of course: Huntsman involving a small target cleave, Artificer involving heavy movement, and Sludgefist involving specific time crunched DPS. So, unfortunately, Arcane is the bottom performing spec. Limit Max, the raid leader for Limit, released a little video talking about the state of each spec as well. And in that video, he talked about Arcane being a meme still, Frost having specific utility, and Fire, of course, being the number one meta. And that's kind of where Arcane is at in raid still. We are still considered a meme, and that is simply due to how punishing it is for movement. For example, on the Artificer fight, the top three parses that did not have PI included, Arcane came in at 5.6k DPS, Fire came in at 6.6k DPS. That's over 1,000 DPS higher than Arcane parsing average. That is a substantial figure on probably the heaviest movement fight, right? And that kind of exemplifies Arcane's problems in raid. Movement hurts Arcane, and it hurts it really bad. So, as far as raid goes, we are still not in a great place. That could all change, of course, if in the next raid tier we see a lot less movement-based mechanics. The less movement, the better Arcane performs, or more specifically, if we're able to have fights where the movement is planned movement. If we're able to not have random movement, that is what actually hurts us. It's less, you think about the Artificer fight when you have the beams randomly appearing or you randomly get asphyxiated. Those types of things are what makes Arcane's DPS bad, because it's random at times that can make you have to move. Your forced movement will hurt your DPS more than anything else. So going past the raid here, as far as where we're at on the DPS, this is where we get into the good news. We're looking at spec or covenant viability, right? What is actually going on at the top here? So if you haven't already, I do think there's a great video by APM Billion. He is one of the top performing mages in the world right now. And in this video, he talks about how Necrolord and Night Fae are the highest performing covenants, but all four are viable as well. And I kind of, looking at the data, it truly is. So Night Fae is on average performing the best, but looking at the top 10 players here for Arcane at the current state, we have 3 Night Fae, we have 2 Necrolord, a Venthyr, and 3 Curian. So it's balanced, right? We have representation of the top 10 for all covenants. And for each fight, we kind of see that play out as well. Out of these top 10 parses, we've got Venthyr at the top on Shriekwing. We've got a lot of Necrolord. We've got some Venthyr, Necrolord, Night Fae on the Huntsman fight. Really, over the course of all of this, here's some Kyrian thrown in here on Sun King. Really what we're seeing is a lot of Covenant diversity. So if you are someone who specifically enjoys the aesthetics of a Covenant, or if you enjoy the play style of a Covenant, this is your time. Play what you want to play and learn to play that Covenant to its absolute best. If you're someone who's looking to play the absolute best performing Covenant for Arcane, you don't have to do anything. From the previous patch to this patch, Night Fae is still going to perform the best on average. And that is also moving into our next subject, legendary selection. So Arcane really has three primary legendaries that we use. That is the Time Warp legendary, Arcane Harmony, which is essentially the missiles legendary, and then our final one is Arcane Bombardment, which is the Execute legendary. So these three legendaries are typically what we look at when we're talking about like what legendary should we play. They all have specific fights that they perform the best on, but generically, guess what? Time Warp is still the best. Time Warp is the best to play. So if you're someone who doesn't want to swap Covenants and you don't want to swap legendaries, guess what? You don't got to. Time Warp and Night Fae are still the highest performing on average. Now, of course, this is still pretty early. The meta may change, but it's looking like it's going to turn out where Night Fae and Time Warp still perform the best on average. But if you want to play with Harmony, Harmony has great parses across every single fight and is entirely viable. So Time Warp and Harmony, both viable every single fight. Bombardment definitely has its niche, where it can perform really good on the execute phase in Sire, and it can also perform really good in the Sun King Salvation fight, where you have a lot of execute damaged output. So it is definitely situational, and that's one of the big takeaways here. Situational. That is how Arcane is right now. Situational. You can play any Covenant to be viable. Really, both of those top two legendaries are viable in any situation, but what is the best in each situation is situational. If there's a lot more movement, you want to use something that's going to allow you to have more movement. If there's a lot of execute damage, you want to use something that's going to have more execute damage. If there's a heavy burn phase in a Time Warp way, like with a Shriekwing, for example, you have a lot of time damage from when you're warping, then Temporal Warp's going to be great. This is kind of where we're at with Arcane. Play what you want to play. And that is kind of where I want to wrap up the video. Play what you want to play. Arcane is an amazing spec. It's very well-rounded right now to be able to play what you want to play. So we may not be performing the best in Raid, but right now you can play whatever Covenant you want. You have multiple legendary selections, and we are becoming more powerful as things have progressed. So let's hope that trend keeps happening, and we will see everyone in my next video. Thank you. Everyone have a great day.